Okay, so we are right at 1 o'clock, so we're going to get started on time. There will be a replay for anybody that comes in just a little late. Again, welcome and thank you guys so much for joining in the conversation about DMO relevancy and all the craziness that's been going on lately with lots of DMOs being defunded, others contracts taken away from the entity of the DMO, and it's just become a really crazy situation. So for us, the shift has hit the fan, if you will, and all our butts are on the line. So we really want to just bring our voice in and give some good advice and just what we're seeing and how to build what we're calling a DMORP, a DMO relevancy plan, and keep that sustainable and really going. So lots of familiar people on here since I've been in the DMO industry so long, but we have some new faces too, so if you will just pardon the Texas boast, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on who I am. And by the way, we're going to leave this as an open conversation, so please feel free to chat at any time with any questions, and we'll dive into any particular situation. I'm Jennifer Barbee. I'm the CEO of Destination Innovate. I've been working with DMOs for about 30 years, which sounds kind of old, but I got to say I started super early. So if you'll excuse that part, I'm a little younger than that implies. I've worked with a little over 400 DMOs of all sizes, and I'll give you just a couple of quick pieces on that, just for context purposes. I've worked with really large tier 1 destinations: New York, Miami, Las Vegas. All the way down to the smallest destinations in boutique areas, and just solving particular marketing, advertising, and leadership problems that those DMOs have faced. One of my proudest moments was prior to Brand USA, the federal government under the Bush administration Congress had approved an initial $50 million to market the United States to foreign visitors for the first time in history. And I was chosen as the digital and communications strategist for that. So that was one of the most proud moments I've ever had. But lots of different things in there. Started in advertising and marketing, heavy concentration in digital because digital was such a disruptor. So really making changes with DMOs and helping step them into something that was unfamiliar and untested, and so many threats around it in terms of digital marketing was really a great place to be. So I worked for an agency that was one of the largest digital marketing agencies for DMOs. And then I started my own agency after that, and really kind of came to the point of realizing that what's happening in the agency world is also really changing and really fragmented. And one of the main things for me was there's got to be a better way, because what happens, especially in the digital space, because once DMOs really got it and realized how digital they had to be, then it kind of blows up, and scaling means turning into a factory, which is my issue with the current agency model, is that to be able to scale and to be able to handle hundreds and hundreds of destination clients, you're going to lose a lot in creativity, a lot in ideas, and a lot in real ROI, because it's what I call the McDonald's 2 pickles on a bun strategy. So Destination Innovate was really born out of the frustration of how to serve on the marketing and advertising front, and opened ourselves up to something a little bit different, a little more consultative and coaching, and bringing all of that experience and that history back to the destinations. And actually, because of this particular problem that we're facing right now, and it's been going on for a long time, but it has heated up. As a matter of fact, just since February, there have been 6 destinations who have either been defunded, or their contracts canceled, or are in threat of funding very closely. So at the end of this, we do have a pretty new program to assist DMOs in that realm and space. And of course, just one more other thing there. I am actually the only DMO agency, if you will, but only DMO consulting firm that's also been invited and part of the Forbes Agency Council. You might want to check out some of our articles and our pieces on that. We contribute pretty regularly to Forbes. So the boasting is over. Now we'll move on to the meat. So the first thing I want to talk about is the mindset in terms of this DMO relevancy argument. Now, the mindset really has to go down to a particular role. So I want you to think about, we have so many different roles also of people that are attending right now, everything from CEOs to CMOs to communication specialists to sales and marketing people. So we're going to first think about what your role might be in that relevancy argument. For instance, if we have meetings and salespeople on here, which we do, there's obviously demonstrable impact when it comes to bringing in large meetings, small meetings, a consistent amount of groups. That's going to have a direct relevant impact. So you've got a great leg up there. But also, if you're over marketing and you're doing advertising and you're working with your agencies, one of the things you have to think about is how do you justify the spend? And it's got to be much more deep and complex than just the impressions, clicks, the data we get that doesn't become actionable. So there's some things to think about is what can my role be in keeping our DMO relevant and a rock star? Now, on the other side of that, there are the roles of those who might be challenging to that. And even though this is what really gets me here is even though you may really feel like as a CEO or as a leader, as executive in your destination, that you have total destination cheerleading, like your board's behind you, the city loves you, all of that kind of good stuff. But it really only takes what's going on now to have them start looking deeper and more specifically. So think about the roles of those that can threaten your DMO and what would be the payoff for them to either threaten or get on board. And it's got to be a constant relationship piece that has to happen there. So let's just jump into some common threats that are the thread that's happening right now. Now, first, I'm sure you have all dealt with this spending tax money argument. And this frustrates me so much because usually it's 100% funded by bed tax. However, there are some sticky situations, especially with a city contract, where it's some bed tax, but then there's other taxes from the city that do get part of that. So community is going to be really important when dealing with that tax issue. The other, especially with popular destinations, because if you've done a really great job at marketing, then they're like, okay, you're done. Visitors are already coming here. There's over tourism arguments. There's those things that are happening. Visitors may be coming naturally, which is why you need to think about what part of the visitation can you take specific credit for. But the visitors already come is also a just really an argument that doesn't hold water, because that may be happening today, but without the support of the DMO and of the DMO marketing, of the ad spend, of those things that are happening on a consistent time, what's the long tail look like? And if the visitors kind of stop coming or dwindle down, or we give that visitor to another brand like an OTA that I'll get into in just a second, then what happens to the community? Is the community still desirable to live in? Are you still improving the community? So there is jobs are lost, and an expensive to live destination. Those frontline employees who might lose jobs have a real issue too. So visitors already coming is another like whatever argument that's going on that really doesn't hold water. Also spending. There's a lot, and this may just happen regularly too. There's a lot around the conversation of spending. And a lot of times, especially if you have a nice advertising budget and media spend, then you're going to have some people in different areas that challenge that spending because they may not have access to the type of nice advertising and programmatic and great creative and great branding that you do. So they're looking at what they spend and saying, oh, well, you know what? You can get that for $300. Why are they spending $20,000 on it? So the spending in terms of the value is really important to think about as well. And impact. Impact is probably the ongoing biggest challenge we have to prove our relevancy and to really make sure that people understand that we're actually making an impact. Now, I want you to think about impact in terms of incremental impact, because when you say visitation is up, well, that's great, but then you have to pull out the margins there, and you've got to show what specific impact was made by your specific efforts. So these are just some common threats that are going on all the time. And there's tons of other ones. I mean, it is a political environment, and maybe a lot of you in different roles within the organization never really thought you were going to be in politics, but here we are. So definitely time for a change. It's time for us in the DMO industry and the DMO vendors. And that it does frustrate me that a lot of the vendors won't take up arms with their DMOs because they're trying to protect their contracts and their income and their revenue. But it is absolutely time for a change and time for us to change the conversation, make it more preemptive, and shut it down. So the first thing that I suggest is really working on a predictive model, or what I'm calling a DMORP, a DMO Relevancy Plan. And you may call it something else in terms of the outside, but think about this for a minute. You probably have a really good crisis communication plan already in place. What if you have massive catastrophe in weather, or what if something else happens? And there's lots of ways to deal with that, with bad press, with a story going out. So think about your DMORP as a more operational and consistent crisis communication plan, because consider it constantly in crisis. So building that predictive model, saying, here's what would happen if we didn't exist, and then pulling pieces out on how you communicate that really gets you in the catbird seat of handling these things before they ever come to your destination. So a couple of points here to think about in that predictive model is, what is the cost to a local business related to travel in your destination if the DMO did not exist? And I want to think about this in just a few ways. And again, just want to remind you guys, if you have questions or if you want to share an experience, please feel free to chat. I'm the only one that can see, so we'll keep it private and just deal with the issue itself. So the cost to the local business is, let's say that that DMO advertising spend is now gone. It will cost a local business more to compete, because it is in the best interest of an OTA or other travel sellers to take the DMO place, which, by the way, that was another real threat around the 2004 time, where Travelocity had gone to a city government in New Mexico and asked them to shut down the DMO and give them the tax money because they were marketing better than the DMO. So fast forward to now, if the DMO did not exist, did not do its great things, is that the local businesses will have to pay more to compete, because if a OTA, if an Expedia, if a TripAdvisor, if someone who has real interest in booking travel business in the marketplace has the opportunity to kind of go wild, and it's already happening now. I'm sure you've all seen that, for instance, your PPC is almost too much to even compete with, because they're bidding those same terms and they drive the price in the market up. And so now it costs more and more. Like, for instance, when PPC first arrived and before OTAs got the trust of the customer, I could buy great travel keywords all day long, 50 cents a click. Those same keywords today are over 500 a click. And that's because the market compression there. You still have some wiggle room in social media there. And let me not get off topic, because what will happen is these local businesses will have to spend more and more and more to even show up and get attention for themselves. And hoteliers are already paying that 18% plus promotion to those OTAs. So they're losing money on the RevPAR, on the rooms, and then they're also going to lose money on the advertising, because it's going to be more and more expensive to do that. And without good co-op programs and without affordable access, the cost of the local businesses could potentially put them out of business. And again, jobs lost there. So in your DMORP, oh, just got a question I'm going to hit here. How can DMOs who serve alongside an EDC in their city be more collaborative in addressing economic development issues without feeling like we're overstepping boundaries? Great question. The EDC DMO engagement and hopefully marriage model is really picking up speed. And what I love about that is you're not overstepping it. The EDCs are now really understanding that tourism is big business. And so it's important, and it makes a lot of sense for that EDC to work with the DMOs together. And I think you've got to shift the position of thinking about the DMOs. They really wouldn't step on each other's foot, because what's happening with DMOs is we're going from destination marketing organizations to destination leadership organizations. So think again, we're going to go back to roles there. Think about those roles between the DMOs and the EDCs. And I think a real collaboration is important. And especially back to what we're talking about relevancy right now, it's important for that EDC, for the DMO to stay operational as well. So there's some great opportunity there for economic development and protection of that DMO model with your EDC. Are any of you already a partner with EDCs in terms of operating together? I don't see too many on that. So we'll talk about the next piece in building a predictive model of what could happen. So the next is really B2B representation. And I mentioned, the sales portion of the DMO earlier. Without someone to really sell the larger meetings, the larger groups, the consistent Smurf market, that B2B representation will have a big hole. So that's another way that you really want to think about how you show your value and the type of B2B representation that happens. How are you serving meeting planners now? How are you serving those attendees? How are you making it better for the destination as a whole? And again, how does that make you relevant to that destination and those local businesses? Also, there is a real issue of a brain drain without your DMO, because you guys are able to go out there and get great industry knowledge and really spend some time on innovating what you're doing to talk to your stakeholders, to talk to your visitors, to talk to your meeting planners. So there's a lot of industry knowledge that you bring back to the community that would not be there otherwise. And you want to think about, in a predictive model, you want to think about how that knowledge actually impacts your local businesses, your stakeholders, and your community. So a little overview about how to build a predictive model, but here's some opportunity too. If you want to get the right tribe for yourself, then you've got to really think about the community too. How is it a better destination to live, work, play, raise children in because of the efforts of the destination marketing organization? So community, you've got to keep them on your side, and whether that's giving back, whether that's programs, whether that's just communication to let them know how much better the community is getting because of the increase in attractions, or the increase in restaurants, or the increase in just quality of life because of the efforts of your DMO. Stakeholders are obviously a great opportunity, and they also can be a great threat too. There's lots of stakeholders that don't totally understand the role of the DMO, or they might buy in completely, or there might be a lot of friction there. Especially, I've seen this most often, especially in the hotel marketplace. That is where there's a lot of friction with the stakeholders. So think about offering the stakeholders more than just co-op, and more than just a once a year, every now and then kind of rally education piece. Really think about how you can get those stakeholders to need it so much that the tools that you provide them are completely necessary to their everyday operations. I got a great question here coming in. What's a good example for how we as a DMO can tell the story of our value to the community? Just a little bit, like I said, I think telling the value of the better living situation, better restaurants, better places to eat, better places to live and grow, and all of that flows into schools and infrastructure and smart cities and all of that. I'd really dial into your specific DMO and not just think about the visitation and what kind of tax it brings in, but what kind of other businesses has it attracted? How has it improved the quality of life? And so I would actually really think about that being a major communications campaign ongoing. So back to the stakeholders just a moment from that. Thank you for the question from Florida. Back to the stakeholders for just a moment. Again, about the tools and getting a little more specific with those stakeholders. And also the stakeholders, I've got a great blog that just went up a couple of days ago if you guys want to check it out on our site. But also the stakeholders very often don't understand their role, because you may have, you've got several hotels competing against each other, and their role, the general role is, well, we're a place to stay. But there's more unique and specific and more persona and prescriptive ways that stakeholder can look at their own role. And once they know the role, then you can also work with those stakeholders to come together and tell the entire story of the destination. So not only are you providing them so much opportunity in terms of the stakeholders and the relevancy of the DMO, but also you're building an incredible marketing team who's savvy and who knows exactly how to run their own things, even though their budgets may not be at your budget, or their budgets might be more. But it's an influencer marketplace that a lot of DMOs I've seen haven't really gotten into at the depth and the level they could. And that's insurance right there. If you did nothing else but work on those stakeholders from this conversation, that is insurance for your relevancy and for increased opportunities and increased ways to find revenue sources for the DMO. So the third opportunity you have is you really need, because go back to spending and what people are going to dial in and criticize in terms of your spending. You've got to think about the vendors you're working with and what really is their role, what really kind of ROI they have. I will say I am not a fan of this big retainer model. It's an old model. You should really be looking at your vendors in a performance-based model where you kind of trim the fat there. So look at places you can trim the fat, and then you're being proactive to anybody looking at your financials and saying, you know what, we saw there's a more business-minded, better way to do things here. So that's those are some quick opportunities that I would hit on there as well. So really, the big victory here isn't like we have, some villain that we're winning against. It is winning for ourselves. So I'm now just going to now that we've kind of laid all that out, I'm going to walk into some of our strategies, some of my strategies for, really dialing in and building a proper DMORP, really operationalizing it and getting it to be part of your everyday process. So first, you're going to recognize and categorize this defense. So we talked a little bit about some of those pieces that can happen. You really have to get comfortable with talking about your wins and be prescriptive about what those wins really meant. And again, this overall, visitation has increased. I mean, it's really a weak argument. And at some point that argument is going to be dissected. So you have to be ready with a predictive modeling of what those wins are and what would happen if those wins aren't there. While you categorize this defense, you're also going to think, and this is where you can get personal in your own particular role within the DMO, is what I call the good like exercise. So, and this is just great personal development too, just in case any of you want to hear this. So I'll just take a quick left turn here and tell you what the good like exercise is. So you're going to get a nice old-fashioned piece of paper, and you're going to draw a big cross in the middle. So you have 4 blocks of areas here. And in that good like exercise, you're going to write what you're good at in your role, what you like to do, what you're not good at, and what you don't like to do. So what you're going to do with categorizing this defense, whether it's on a DMO level or a personal level of your role within the DMO, is you're going to obviously address how you deal with the problems of what you're not good at as a DMO or as a person, and what you don't like to do or cannot do. You're going to build a defense on that, and then you're going to dial in to what you're really good at and what you like to do and what works really well, and that is going to be part of the message for your defense. And of course, a lot of this is about controlling the message. And controlling the message, taking all of this together, controlling the message is about consistency. It's not about just defense when something happens to pop up. You know, you're also going to need to think about things in terms of the way we lay out two different kind of brand messages. There are painkillers and there are vitamins. And I may have a lot of great healthy people who are really into their health here, but the average person is not motivated to take a vitamin. But if that person has a toothache, they're damn well running to the dentist. So being a painkiller, solving problems for your destination, for your area, is a great way to control that message. You have to be aware of the community issues. You have to be aware of the infrastructure issues. And as you are solving those problems, that's how you control the message. Trying to answer after something happens, and I know I've got a lot of PR professionals in here, crisis communications is tough. It's really tough because once it's happened, a done bun can't be undone. So now you've got to continue to try to deal with the messaging. And again, you know, in crisis communication, that can be so many things for a destination. So you're going to recognize and categorize that defense. Also want you guys to really think big. I know, especially in local government and in positions like that, it's sometimes hard to think really outside of the box, but I know a lot of destinations are getting there. Like, what is the best possible outcome for your relevancy as a DMO where you are? Just dream incredibly large. Like, what is happening? Are you getting a public-private partnership? Are you doubling up your budget from just bed tax and local government support only? You're getting massive sponsors. What's that outcome look like? And when you're thinking big and when you're doing this and when you're in those creative sessions, no idea is a bad one. You really have to think those through. Also, it's important that each of you in your role and as a DMO on the whole have what we call a crusade mentality. Like, not a goal, but a crusade. Like, this is something we're going to win. Here's how we're going to get this overall vision totally done, and consistency after that. Because what if you were to change the story? But that crusade is so much more important than a plan. Like, you have the plan to give you some guidance, and that's great. But if you aren't passionate and fired up and excited and visionary about it, then you're going to have a lot of things that sound good, just like a lot of DMOs do when they buy vendors who just come sell them this new thing that is going to, you know, solve everything. And then they never use it, or they don't use it to its fullest. It's because there is a lack of crusade mechanism and there's a lack of passion there. So when you're thinking about all of this, the crusade piece to me is the most important thing to think about. You've got to stay fired up, because you don't want to be caught on some idle Tuesday finding out that your DMO may be defunded. And you've got to find your tribe. I love tribe better than, and it works for your marketing and advertising too. I love tribe so much more than target audience or advocates, because a tribe is just right in there with you, right? They're your who is your ride and die. So think about your stakeholders, your local people, maybe even outside DMO partnerships, your peer circles. Who can sponsor what you're trying to get done? Who is your tribe? And think about what resources you need to keep that tribe engaged and happy and alive. But definitely you want to think about finding your tribe here. So we're hitting right at the 30-minute mark, and we talked a lot about some opportunities and some challenges and a little advice on pulling things together. And I'm going to talk to you I'm going to close it up with a little bit about the program that I put together to help in this issue. But before I do that, I'm going to open it up and chat again. Does anybody want to share maybe what's going on with them or how they've had a challenge in being relevant in your local destination? And again, I won't say the where, but we can discuss the what. Okay, looks like we got a little shy people in here for that part of it, but I can tell you, I'm probably pretty sure that either you personally or your DMO or your DMO executive has probably, seen some of these issues before. So looking at that and just knowing how hard it is and how compressed you guys are in terms of all of the hats you have to wear, all the roles you have to play, all the vendors you have to manage, and all of your day-to-day activities of just keeping up, I really started to put together, like, with our experience and what we've seen and what we've been through and how good we are at the communication part of it and the coaching part of it. I just want to, wait, I got a question. Oh, okay. I've got one here saying we are taking National Tourism Week to rally our stakeholders involving the mayor and local politicians. I think that's great. The National Tourism Week and using that as a rally for your stakeholders is a great place to come together. Because again, that goes back to your tribe and your cheerleaders. And I love the word rally as it is. I would also just suggest to take that deep, like when they're rallying on how awesome your destination is on NTW, and when they're coming together, like what little extras can you do? Can you help them tell the story better for themselves? It's a great opportunity for you to help coach the stakeholders into their personal role. So great question and great comment there. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up with you guys. Well, actually, I'm a couple slides away from wrapping up. So when you think about your action plan, got ahead of myself there, sorry. When you think about your action plan, you want to think about goals versus action plans. So I see a lot of goals or, overall KPIs that are just weak in terms of things. So a goal is a perfect outcome, but an action plan is something that supports that. What are the 6 things that can happen in the next 6 months that will get us there? What are those milestones? What are those things looking like? Focusing on the results versus the process. Because if you give me an incredible cake for my birthday, I don't care if you did that from scratch or if you did it with, other people or someone did it for you. Focus on the result and not the process. So your action plans need to have some wiggle room in there for you guys to be able to find a better and more inventive way to do things. And then operationalize. This is something especially in your marketing and advertising portion of things, is operationalizing what you want. Again, I know you guys are trying to keep up, so you're adding tools, you're adding things. Oh, wait, so-and-so is doing Snapchat, so I need to do Snapchat, so I need to do these things. And it's a very specific and hard thing to keep chasing. So in relevancy and in your advertising and marketing, operationalize the results that you want to get. And then those habits, the habitual nature of what you're doing every day just becomes part of your standard operating procedure. It should be in your business as operational, and rather not just a marketing plan that sits on that shelf and a couple of agencies do a little bit of work to get some of that stuff done. So get out of tactical thinking, get into strategic thinking in terms of operationalizing things. I have another question here. What type of KPIs should we be adding to our results to measure to better show our worth? It's a great question. And I know most of you now are getting so many data sets from so many different sources because there's some incredible analytical information out there for DMOs now, some really revolutionary things. And I know some of those even follow like Arrivalist from the advertising all the way to the feet and the destination. And that's good, but it's also anecdotal. So the type of KPIs I want you to be thinking about are the kind of KPIs or overall measurements that I talked about a little bit in the beginning of this, which is how can you show the incremental impact of the DMO? So that is going to be, what of those visitors can you take credit for? What of those meetings can you take credit for? And really, I think we should all start thinking about ourselves a lot more like a business in terms of revenue and impact and where influences come from. Just on that same vein, another warning on KPIs that you may be currently doing. And it's so funny because I just had a conversation with a great friend of mine at Adara, and they're talking about how many DMOs are buying this incredible insights that they give them But then the feedback they get is they look at it like once a year when they have to put their annual report together. So there's nothing actionable that happens in that. So I would say you probably have a lot of the numbers, if you will, and insights into personas and habitual nature and last click attribution and all of those kind of good things. You probably have a great amount of data, but relating those back to the core KPIs, if you are running a business, how do you tell the story of that KPI back to your community, back to your stakeholders, back to your board? So again, the KPIs are going to be just like a business KPI, which I think a lot of DMOs are starting to run with now. Thanks for the question. And then lastly, once you do all of this, there's a great saying that says, if you want to take the island, burn the boats. And basically that's a very old from Caesar, from war times when they were taking over different countries and city-states and all of that, is they actually brought their boats up and their army was nervous. So Caesar burned all of their boats. So they had no opportunity to do anything but take the island. So burning the boat. So what you want to do is there's no way we're going to get off track anymore. We've trimmed the fat. We've done this. We've operationalized that. We're doing this with the community. We're doing this with our marketing and advertising. Once you have settled on that, give yourself a space or a structure to allow no other outcome, no other distractions. You're not going to buy the shiny new thing right now because you already have an operational opportunity. You already have what you're going to do. It's not like there's no fear of missing out and, oh, I'm going to do this because my other DMO competitor is doing this. Stay focused. Say no to yourself and to others. It's anything outside that vision that you're building for your own DMO and for your DMO relevancy. And now I'm going to tell you just a little bit about, not a pitch, just letting you guys know a little bit about what we're putting together now, which is called Destination Advance Me. Again, as I mentioned before, being from agency so long, I really wanted to pull together an elite program for the advancement and protection of DMOs, an opportunity for DMOs to get direct coaching, to be able to ask these questions, and to, oh, thank you so much for the question. The webinar will have a replay link that I'll send to you guys, and thank you so much for that. But just really quick, and when I thought about putting this program together, I regularly talk to a lot of our DMO clients and coach them with a lot of these issues, a lot of their marketing and advertising issues. And so I wanted to put something together that was super inexpensive and not those crazy agency inflated fees to build a DMORP and keep it on track and keep it standard. So what I'm doing is kind of putting this small elite group together. It's invitation only, content tools, plan assistance. We also offer a virtual stakeholder workshop or an in-person workshop to give them the coaching they need for their roles. And it's interesting that someone mentioned earlier from National Tourism Week on a rally. We're actually doing that, something very similar with one of our destination clients. We're coming in and doing the role and the story and how they fit in there. So I love that part of it. I do a monthly call on prescriptive consultation or how that plan is going on, email access, and private group peer circles. So if you are interested in maybe doing something like this with me, do let me know. I'm going to start May 1, so the enrollment will end May 1. And because I have put so much time and planned all this out to work really, really well for all DMOs, I won't reopen that until August the 1st. So I'm going to let those 90 days go in. So you have options there. This could just be a 90-day get you guys going type of thing, and then you can go on your own, or it can be an ongoing sustainability possibility. But I've got my email down here. I will share with you guys again, but I would love to see some of these amazing advocates in this room. And I'm loving the energy here. Thank you for all the chats. I would love to see some of you guys be part of this, because having a private group peer circle as well means that you guys can talk to each other and help each other solve those problems, and it wouldn't be open to everybody. So that's what is it, like Forrest Gump says, that's all I got to say about that. Really, really appreciate you guys' time. I know we went over about 10 minutes more than I promised, but I just get super passionate. There's so much to share on this. I honestly could have done this for 3 hours. There are so many other case studies and pieces I could tell you about that you could possibly do. But do make sure to, if you haven't already, to subscribe to our site so you can get great content all the time. Feel free to reach out to me, jbarbee@destinationinnovate.com. I have my phone number here, and I will share the recorded link. All right, guys, I think we're good. Thank you so much, and we'll continue with the great content and continue to be crusade runners for our lovely DMO friends. Y'all have a great day.